When I caught my wife cheating, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a ritual. Her mother told her to forgive herself. My father told me to ignore it. These things happen, he said. What matters is she came back home. But you don't come back home after you burn it down. And you don't ask a man to stay standing inside the ruins like nothing happened. They weren't shocked she cheated. They were shocked I cared. That's when I realized they didn't just raise her, they trained her to lie, to take, to expect I'd stay quiet, just like all the other men in this family have for generations. But I'm not like them. I was raised in silence, but I learned how to listen. And when I finally opened my mouth, I didn't speak. I destroyed. This isn't a story about cheating. It's about what happens when a man realizes the whole damn family was in on it and decides to make every single one of them regret underestimating him. The worst betrayals come dressed as traditions. They used to say we were the perfect couple. People at church would smile when they saw us walking here in that floral summer dress, me in a tucked shirt and boots, still a little dusty from the shop. She'd hold my arm like we were some kind of storybook, and I'd nod to every old-timer who shook my hand like I'd won the lottery marrying her. And I thought maybe I had. Her name was Kate. We met when we were kids, grew up a few miles apart, knew the same cornfields and back roads and 4th of July parades. Our parents were friends long before we started dating. I think they were planning our wedding before we even kissed. When we finally did, behind the grain silo at the county fair, I swear I felt time stop for half a second. We were 18 and thought love was supposed to hurt sometimes, just so it felt real. Our fights were fiery but quick, and the making up came easy. I worked with my dad at the auto shop. She did shifts at the bakery in town, covered in flour and smelling like cinnamon. We got married the summer after high school. No big ceremony, just vows behind her granddad's barn, a borrowed suit, and a few tears. Everyone said we were doing it right. Marry young, stay loyal, work hard, have babies, build something. For a long time, I thought we were. We bought a small house near the edge of town, one of those old places with slanted floors and creaky pipes, but it was ours. I built her a porch swing. She painted the kitchen yellow. We didn't have much, but we had enough. I still remember coming home late from the shop some nights and seeing her curled on the couch, hair messy, holding a warm plate for me with a tired smile, and I used to believe that. Smile meant everything was okay. Her touch was soft, her words were sweet when she wanted them to be, and when we argued, she always had a way of making me feel like I'd been too rough, too loud, too stuck in my ways. I'd back down, apologize first. I thought that's what love looked like. I thought that was strength, being the man who keeps the peace. We had our daughter Emily, 3 years in, and that girl cracked me wide open. I held her in that delivery room and swore I'd protect both of them for the rest of my life. I thought about my dad and how he never said I love you, but always made sure the fridge was full. I told myself I'd do better. I kissed Kate every night. I read bedtime stories in silly voices. I skipped hunting trips to fix leaky sinks and driveways. I didn't mind. Being a good husband and father was the only kind of man I ever wanted to be. Kate stayed home after Emily was born, said she wanted to be there for the early years, and I agreed. I worked longer hours, picked up side jobs, fixing fences, replacing water heaters, whatever folks needed. She'd thank me in quiet ways, a fresh pie cooling on the windowsill, a handwritten note in my lunchbox. For a while, it felt like something sacred, like we'd built a life the way our parents had. Simple, devoted, predictable in the good ways. Her parents visited often. Her mother would scold her about keeping her hair brushed and her figure slim, and her dad would sit out back with me, drinking cheap beer and talking about how women are always a little flighty, but you learn to live with it. I used to laugh that off, thought he was just an old man talking, but now I wonder if he wasn't warning me, just in the wrong direction. My own father wasn't much for advice, but when he saw how hard I was working, he said, "You do it for your family. That's what makes you a man." So I kept doing it. And when Kate started going to yoga twice a week, I offered to watch Emily. When she said she needed weekends away for retreats with the girls, I packed her bags and told her to have fun. I never asked questions, never checked her phone. She said she needed space, and I thought giving it to her made me supportive, not stupid. I didn't see it happening. Not really. Looking back, maybe I noticed her pulling away, the way she stopped humming while she cooked, the way her hugs landed a little softer, like they were going through the motions. But I told myself she was tired. Motherhood wears women down, that's what they all say. I figured it was just a phase. It wasn't. One night, after Emily had gone to bed, Kate came into the kitchen and said she wanted to talk. She sat across from me with that same calm face she wore when she told me she'd dented the truck. Only this time, the dent was in us. She said she'd made a mistake, that it was just one time and that it didn't mean anything. Remember the light over the sink flickering while she spoke? Like even the house didn't believe her. She cried, of course. Said she loved me. Said she was sorry. I think I just stared at her, trying to find the woman I built this life with, but all I saw was someone who'd already left, just waiting to see if I'd be dumb enough to let her stay. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I wanted to smash that kitchen table I'd built with my own hands, but I didn't. I asked who it was. She said it didn't matter. I asked if it was over. She said she wasn't sure. That broke me more than anything, not the cheating, not the lies, but the hesitation. The fact that after everything, she still hadn't decided if I was worth staying faithful to. She said she'd told her mom, and her mom said it wasn't a big deal, that every woman strays eventually, that what matters is keeping the family together. She looked at me like I should be proud of her for being honest. I was stunned. I called my dad that night, thought maybe he'd talk some sense, but all he said was, "You think your mother never wandered? What matters is whether she comes back." That's when I understood. This wasn't just Kate. It was all of them. All of them raised her to believe that love was something you used until it cracked, and then you patched it up with silence and duty and shame. They didn't see this as betrayal. They saw it as normal. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized I wasn't just fighting for my marriage. I was standing alone in the middle of a war I never agreed to, and they had all already chosen their side. I wasn't losing a marriage, I was losing the only illusion that ever made it bearable. After that night in the kitchen, we didn't speak of it again. Not really. She said she needed time, and I gave it to her like I always did. She moved back into our bedroom 2 days later, without asking. Slipped under the covers like nothing had happened. I laid beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the fan rattle with each slow spin. I waited for her to say something. She never did. I thought maybe she regretted it. Maybe she saw what it had done to me. Maybe love could survive a fracture that deep. But then the small things started happening. Little moments that didn't hurt on their own, but stacked together like kindling under a house that was already too dry to save. She changed her phone password. She'd always said she had nothing to hide. But now, when it buzzed, she turned it face down. When I walked in the room, she'd lower her voice, say things like, "I'll call you back," or "I'm just talking to Mom," even when I hadn't asked. She stopped cooking, stopped wearing the old sweatshirt of mine she used to say felt like home. One night, I caught her crying in the bathroom, sitting on the floor like a stranger in her own life. I asked what was wrong. She said, "I don't know who I am anymore." I told her, "You're my wife." She didn't answer. Emily started noticing. She was just 10, but kids feel things before they understand them. One night she asked, "Why doesn't Mom laugh anymore?" I didn't have an answer, so I said, "She's tired." Emily nodded, but she didn't believe me. I didn't believe myself. Then came the emails. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when you sit at the kitchen table with a laptop wide open and forget to log out, someone's gonna see eventually. It was her mother, messaging Kate about setting boundaries and not giving in emotionally just because he's being nice. One line stuck with me. "You owe it to yourself to keep this separate. Don't let him make you feel guilty for wanting more." Wanting more. That's what this had become. Not a mistake, a strategy. She started going to therapy every Friday afternoon. I offered to drive her once. She said no, quickly, too quickly. When she came home, she always seemed too happy, lighter, like someone who let go of a weight they'd carried too long. But I was the weight. I asked once, just once, "Are you still seeing him?" She looked at me with this strange mix of sadness and irritation, like I was a child asking if Santa was real. She said, "It's not about him." I asked, "Then what is it about?" She didn't answer. That night, she slept on the far side of the bed, curled inward. I stared at her back and thought about how much space can grow between two people who once shared everything. At Sunday dinner, her father said something that soured the roast. He looked at me over his beer and said, "You know, the happiest marriages I've seen are the ones where the husband minds his business." He said it like a joke. No one laughed. My father didn't defend me, just stared at his plate and chewed slower, like he'd heard that line before, maybe even said it once. It made me wonder how many times my mother sat at a table like this, holding a fork in one hand and her dignity in the other. I started noticing patterns. Kate never went out on Monday nights. She always left the house on Thursdays around 6:15. Her phone never rang after 9 p.m. She'd smile to herself sometimes while reading something on her screen, then quickly swipe it away when I entered. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't digging. I was just finally looking. One day I came home early from the shop. The house was empty, but there was a wine glass on the table. Lipstick smudge, music still playing faintly from the Bluetooth speaker. Her perfume hung in the air, but it wasn't the usual scent. It was heavier, sweeter, meant for someone else. The bedroom was clean, too clean, as if someone had left in a hurry, but had time to straighten the pillows. I sat on the couch and waited. She didn't come home for another 2 hours. Said she'd been running errands. I asked what she bought. She hesitated. "Just groceries." I walked into the kitchen. The fridge was empty. I didn't say a word, just nodded. Later that night, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Tired eyes, sun-worn skin, a mouth that hadn't smiled in weeks. I wondered if I'd become the kind of man no one wanted to be loyal to. And then I hated myself for thinking that. Because loyalty isn't about who deserves it. It's about who gives it. And I'd given her everything. A week later, I overheard Emily on the phone with a friend. She said, "I think my mom likes someone else." The friend must have asked how she knew. Emily whispered, "She talks to him like she used to talk to Dad." I walked out the back door and didn't come back for hours, just drove. No music, no destination, only the sound of my own breathing and the thought looping over and over. I'm losing her, and no one thinks it's wrong. I tried to talk to my father again, told him I didn't know what to do. He looked at me and said, "You think I didn't go through this? Your mother had her moments. Hell, I had mine. You just put your head down and keep the family together. That's your job." I asked, "Even if she's already gone?" He just said, "Especially then." That night, Kate didn't come home at all. She texted at 11:43 p.m., "Staying at Mom's. Don't wait up." No explanation, no apology, just instructions. The next morning, Emily asked where she was. I said she needed some time, and that's when I realized, so did I. But not to fix things, to end them. If they all knew and said nothing, then none of them deserved mercy. And the day she didn't come home, something inside me didn't just snap, it settled. I woke up alone in our bed and stared at the dent her body had left in the mattress. It felt like staring into a grave. But there were no more tears, no confusion, no begging my mind to make it make sense. Just a stillness I hadn't felt in years. I got up, showered, packed a small bag, and drove straight to a law office 30 miles away from town. Not the one we used when we closed on the house or drew up wills. A firm she didn't know, a woman lawyer, smart, sharp, cold-eyed in the best way. I gave her everything, dates, names, text messages, receipts, timelines. I'd been collecting for months without realizing I was building a case. Now, I just handed it all over like evidence from a crime scene I didn't commit, but had to clean up. She reviewed it without blinking, said, "We'll move everything quietly, you'll give them nothing. No reaction, no warning." I nodded. It was like someone had written the playbook for exactly this moment. I wasn't angry anymore, I was ready. That scared me, honestly, how calm I'd become, like I had passed through the fire and come out the other side made of stone. First, we moved the assets. I had access to accounts she never bothered to understand. I rewrote the beneficiaries. I rerouted the business shares my father had passed down to a holding LLC in my cousin's name. I sold the truck and leased a new one in a different county. The house, well, that was the masterpiece. We had always talked about putting it in a trust for Emily, so I did. But this trust had a clause, one that guaranteed the property would never fall into the hands of someone with a history of infidelity or breach of spousal contract. Legal, bulletproof, and poetic. Meanwhile, I smiled. I grilled dinner when she came home, acting tired but smug. I kissed her forehead. I asked about her retreats. She told me her mom thought she was being so brave. I told her I agreed. She smiled wide, proud of herself. She had no idea she was already standing on a floor I was sawing out from under her feet. Then came Sunday dinner, the one we never missed. Her, parents, mine, Emily, everyone around the table like nothing had changed, passing mashed potatoes and fake laughs like communion. And I sat there, watching each of their faces. The parents who had told her this was normal, the father who told me to endure, the mother who taught her how to cheat with a clear conscience, the men who had swallowed their pride and called it tradition, and the women who built their entire identities on secrecy and selective memory. I cleared my throat, lifted my glass, smiled. I said, "To honesty." Everyone paused. Kate laughed nervously. "That's a strange toast." I looked her dead in the eye. "Not really. It's just overdue." I reached under the table and pulled out the folder. Thick, labeled, printed on linen paper like a resume. I slid one copy to each parent, then to her. "These," I said, "are copies of the divorce filing. Also included are statements of infidelity, financial deceit, and behavioral patterns documented over the past 9 months. Kate's face drained like I'd cut the power to her entire body. Her mother opened the file, read one line, and gasped. My father didn't even touch his copy, just looked at me like he finally understood who I'd become, or maybe who I always was. Kate whispered, "You planned this?" I said. "From the day you told me you weren't sure if he was worth more than me." She stood up, hand shaking, trying to gather herself. "We can talk about this?" I looked at her mother. "Why?" "You already coached her on how to avoid accountability." Her mother's jaw clenched. "This is family business." I nodded. "And now it's legally binding." Then I turned to my father. "And you? You taught me to stay quiet, to endure. But you forgot to teach me how to stop when enough was enough." He didn't say a word, just looked away, cowardice disguised as wisdom. Emily cried. She asked if we'd be okay. I told her we will be, because the truth finally has a seat at this table. And then I left. No yelling, no dramatic exit, just the sound of chairs shifting and a door closing behind me like the last page of a chapter that should have ended years ago. They called it family. I called it a cult of silence. After I walked out of that dinner, I didn't cry. I didn't scream into the steering wheel or punch the dashboard or fall to my knees in the rain like some movie cliche. I just drove. Windows down, country road humming beneath the tires, the air cold against my face like a second skin. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt awake. Not happy, not whole, but awake. There's a quiet that comes after you burn the last lie down. It's not peace, not yet, but it's the kind of silence you can finally breathe in without choking. I spent the night at my cousin's cabin by the lake. No TV, no service, just the sound of water lapping at the dock and the wind moving through the pine. I laid there staring at the ceiling beams, thinking about how long I'd spent building a life that wasn't real. Not because I lied, but because I believed too much in people who only knew how to take. My father texted me the next morning. "You didn't have to do that in front of everyone." I didn't respond. Kate sent an email 3 days later. No apology, just a list of questions. What would happen with the house, the finances, Emily? She used phrases like, "What's fair and what's respectful?" as if she hadn't erased those words with every choice she made. I forwarded it to my lawyer and deleted it from my inbox. Emily stayed with her grandparents for a while. I missed her. God, I missed her. But I also knew she needed to see something true for once. Not another adult pretending everything was fine, because pretending is easier than facing what you married into. I wrote her a letter, told her I loved her, that none of this was her fault, that sometimes being strong means being the first to say, "This ends with me." Because that's what it came down to, really. Ending it. Not just the marriage, but the legacy of silence, the unspoken rules passed from father to son like some kind of twisted inheritance. Provide, endure, swallow your pain, keep the family name clean, even if your heart's been hollowed out. I looked around and realized every man in my bloodline had done it, sat beside women who betrayed them, lied to them, chipped away at their dignity one quiet moment at a time. And they stayed. For the kids, for the church, for appearances, for peace. But it wasn't peace. It was surrender. And I refused to teach my daughter that's what love looks like. I started over, quietly. I bought a small place on the edge of town, 2 bedrooms, a fireplace, a front porch with chipped paint, and potential. I fixed it up myself, cut the grass every Sunday, learned how to cook more than eggs and toast, started sleeping better. Not always, but better. People ask if I'll ever forgive her. I say forgiveness isn't a gift you owe someone just because time passed. It's something earned, and she never earned it. Not once. I saw her at the grocery store a few weeks ago. She looked older, tired in the way women look when the mask starts to crack. She tried to smile. I didn't. Not out of bitterness. I just didn't have it in me to pretend anymore. She asked how I was. I said, "Better." She nodded, like that was what she hoped I'd say. I walked away. No anger, no weight, just the echo of my own footsteps, free and clear. These days, I don't think much about the man I used to be. The one who believed a quiet life meant a good one. The one who mistook sacrifice for love and patience for strength. I don't hate him, but I don't want to be him again. Because strength isn't how much you can carry. It's knowing exactly when to put it all down and walk away. We don't talk enough about what men are asked to swallow in the name of keeping the family together. We don't talk about how many fathers, sons, husbands have been told to stay silent, forgive without question, and carry the shame someone else created. If you've ever been told that betrayal is just part of marriage, that love means enduring anything, even disrespect, you're not alone. But you're not obligated to stay, either. This story isn't just mine. It's the story of every man who finally looked up from his own exhaustion and realized they never planned to protect you the way you protected them. Permission. So I want to hear from you. Have you ever been told to stay silent for the sake of love or tradition or keeping things together? Was I wrong for doing what I did? Or was it the only honest thing left? Tell your story in the comments. Speak where your father didn't. Break the chain your grandfather never could. This has been Leap into Tales, where we don't just tell stories. We speak the truth they never wanted you to say out loud. Until next time.